Hi, this is an addendum to the infinity limit problems. This is not in our textbook, so I'm calling it 13Z. And there are other types of limits that involve infinity. We did some the other day where we were doing limit as x approaches infinity of like 2x squared plus x over 3x squared minus 7. And these are the ones, if x is approaching infinity, then we looked at the degree on top and bottom. Since these are equal, then we divided the coefficients and we got an answer of 2/3. That's one type of limit involving infinity. There's another one where your answer actually ends up being infinity that is going to look something like this. If I had the limit as x approaches, say, 2 from the left, let's not do 2, let's do x approaches 4 from the left of x plus 1 over x minus 4. With every limit, you always first try to solve by plugging in. This is the one exception, I shouldn't say always. This is the exception where you're approaching infinity. But if I'm approaching 4, I'm always just going to plug in the number first, where 4 plus 1 is 5 over 4 minus 4 is 0. And that creates a problem. A number divided by 0, you cannot divide by 0. Now, if I had 0 divided by 0, we've done those where that means you have to factor and try to cancel. But a number divided by 0 could mean one of three things. This limit either approaches infinity, it either approaches negative infinity, or this limit does not exist. And we have to decide which of those three it is. And that's what we're going to try to figure out. So a number divided by 0 is going to be one of those three options. If you have a number divided by 0, you get one of those three. So the way we're going to figure that out, let's look at this one. The limit as x approaches 3. This is from the right of 2x over x minus 3. When I plug in 3, always try to plug in first. 2 times 3 is 6. 3 minus 3 is 0. Okay, that means I need to know if this is infinity, negative infinity, or does not exist. And the way we're going to figure this out is we're thinking this is a limit approaching x from the right side. And that's important here. You have to recognize that this is coming from the right. Okay, so when I think of numbers that are on the right side of 3, numbers that are on the right side of 3 would be numbers like 4, 5, 6, things like that. Except I'm going to pick a number on the right side of 3. I have 4, 5, and 6. I'm going to get really, really close to the right side of 3. I'm going to use something like 3.1. So 3.1 is on the right side of 3. I'm going to ignore these other ones. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take 3.1 and I'm going to plug it into 2x over x minus 3. When I plug in 3.1, and I get 2 times 3.1, which is 6.2, divided by 3.1 minus 3 is going to be 0.1. And when I plug that in, what I'm really interested in, I really don't care about the numbers. What I really care about is that 6.2 is positive and 0.1 is positive. And 6, since they're both positive, that means this thing is going to approach positive infinity. So if you get a number divided by 0, we're going to plug in a number just on the right side, since this one's right, on the right side. Number 2, we're approaching from the left side. Again, if I plug in 3, we get 6 over 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in a number just on the left, just on the left. So that will be something just on the left side of 3 would be like 2.9. And so if I plug in 2.9, I'll have 2 times 2.9, that's a 5, divided by 2.9 minus 3. And again, all I care about is the sign, whether it's positive or negative. 2 times 2.9 is a positive number. 2.9 minus 3, that's going to be something negative. If you divide a positive by negative, you get something negative, which means this answer is going to be negative infinity, because the positive divided by negative gave me a negative. So there's my final answer for number 2. Number 1 approached positive infinity, 2 approached negative infinity. Now number 3, notice it's the exact same function. Say approaching 3 still, so if I plug in, I get 6 divided by 0. But this one didn't specify a side. It just says x approaches 3, which means I have to look at both sides. Well, I've kind of walked you through number 3 already, because numbers 1 and 2, I've already done the right and I've done the left. And if you look at the right and the left, the answers are positive infinity and negative infinity. Those are different. Since those are 2 different answers, left and right sides are different, that means this thing does not exist. If I don't specify a side, then you have to look at both sides. Right and left, we're going to two different places, so this one did not exist. And we're going to do a problem like this. Let's see. Let's look at number 4 here. The limit as x approaches 2 of this thing. If I plug in 2, 2 plus 2 is 4. 2 squared is 4. Minus 4 is 0. Okay, 4 divided by 0, that means we have to think about whether this is infinity, negative infinity, or does not exist. Notice this one I didn't specify side, so I have to look at both sides. It's x approaches 2, so I have to look at both sides, and we're going to start with the left. So let's look at the left side of this thing. If I'm on the left side of 2, I'm going to plug in something like 1.9. And when I plug in 1.9, I get 2 plus 1.9 divided by 1.9 squared minus 4. Okay, 2 plus 1.9, that's a positive number. 1.9 squared minus 4, that's going to be negative. And if you can't figure that out in your head, remember, I'm going to let you use 4-function or scientific calculators on this test. But 1.9 squared minus 4 is negative. A positive divided by a negative is negative infinity. So I know the left side is going to negative infinity. But before I can answer this, I have to look at the right side also. So let's look at the right. And if I plug in something on the right side, that's going to be something like 2.1. I plug in something on the right side of 2. So I plug in 2.1, 2 plus 2.1 over 2.1 squared minus 4. That's a positive number. 2 plus 2.1 is positive. 2.1 squared minus 4 is going to give me something positive. A positive divided by positive is positive. And now I'm looking at the left and the right, and I see that they are different. If they're different, that means the overall limit does not exist. So there's your answer for number 4, does not exist. Last one I want to do, where are we on time? 7 minutes, not too bad. The last one I want to do is this one. The limit as x approaches negative 5. Again, I didn't specify a side, only said negative 5. So that means we have to look at both sides of this limit. And I guess before I start diving into that, I need to plug in negative 5 to see what I get. 2 times negative 5 is negative 10, minus 3 is negative 13, divided by negative 5 plus 5 is 0, 0 squared is 0. Okay, that means we're looking at infinity, negative infinity, or does not exist, and we have to figure out which of those 3 it is. So the way we're going to figure that out is starting from the right side. Let's plug in something on the right side of negative 5. Think about your number line. We have negative 4, negative 5, negative 6. Something on the right side would be like negative 4.9. So I'm going to plug that in. So 2 times negative 4.9 minus 3 over negative 4.9 plus 5 squared. See, 2 times negative 4.9 is negative, minus 3 is still negative. The bottom's really nice, because if you square something, you always get a positive. Negative 4.9 plus 5 is positive. If you square it, you still get a positive. So this thing is approaching negative infinity from the right. Now I'm going to look at the left side. Look at the left. Something on the left side of negative 5 would be something like negative 5.1. I'll plug that in. So 2 times negative 5.1 minus 3 over negative 5.1 plus 5, all squared. See my top, 2 times a negative is a negative number, minus 3 is still negative. My bottom, negative 5.1 plus 5, that's negative, but when you square it, it's going to become positive. So my left side is also negative infinity. Since my right and my left side are the same, then this answer is going to be the same as those, negative infinity. So anytime you get a number divided by 0, this is the thought process you have to go through. Yeah, if it doesn't specify side, you have to look at left and right. This one I didn't specify side. I had to look at the left and the right. These two, if you specify side, then just look at that one side. But number 3 didn't specify, so we had to look at both. So there's your another type of limit involving infinity. This is not in the book. We'll polish this up on Monday.